The warning lights on Tom Walker's console blinked red as his salvage ship approached the drifting wreckage. Space debris was nothing new to him, but this vessel looked different from anything he had seen before. Its metal surface seemed to shimmer, with colors that changed as he moved closer, and strange symbols covered its hull like glowing tattoos. Tom had been working alone in the outer rim of human space for 3 years now. He preferred the quiet of deep space to the crowded stations near Earth. His job was simple: find damaged ships, strip them for valuable parts, and sell what he could. It paid well enough to keep him independent, and that was all he wanted. As he guided his ship alongside the wreck, Tom noticed something unusual. The alien vessel was still warm. His sensors picked up faint life signs from inside, though the readings were unlike anything in his database. Whatever was in there was alive, but barely hanging on. Tom suited up and crossed through the airlock connecting his ship to the wreck. The inside of the alien vessel was beautiful despite the damage. The walls curved gracefully, and soft light came from panels that still had power. The air was breathable, though it smelled like flowers and rain. Following his scanner toward the life signs, Tom made his way deeper into the ship. He found them in what looked like a nursery. 3 small creatures lay motionless in crystalline pods that flickered with dying light. They were no bigger than house cats, with scales that should have sparkled but now looked dull and gray. Tiny wings were folded against their sides, and their breathing was so shallow Tom almost thought they were already dead. Dragons. They had to be some kind of baby dragons, though Tom had only seen pictures of the mythical creatures in old Earth stories. These were real and they were dying. Tom had a choice to make. Galactic law was clear about finding alien life forms. He should contact the authorities immediately and let them handle the situation. The babies would be taken to research facilities where scientists would study them, poke them, and probably keep them in cages for the rest of their lives. That was the legal thing to do. But looking at the tiny creatures struggling to breathe, Tom could not bring himself to make that call. They were just babies and they needed help now, not after days of paperwork and transport to some lab. He carefully lifted the first baby dragon from its pod. The little creature was surprisingly warm, and Tom could feel its rapid heartbeat against his palm. Its scales were soft, not hard like he expected. The baby made a tiny sound, almost like a kitten's mew, and Tom felt something twist in his chest. Moving quickly, Tom carried all 3 babies back to his ship. He set up a makeshift nursery in his cargo bay, using heat lamps and soft blankets to keep them warm. The ship's medical scanner told him they were severely dehydrated and malnourished, but their basic biology was similar enough to Earth animals that he could help them. Tom spent the next week nursing the babies back to health. He fed them a mixture of protein paste and sugar water from a small bottle, holding each one carefully as they drank. At first, they barely responded, but slowly their scales began to brighten. The smallest one, with silver scales, was the first to open its eyes. They were large and golden, filled with an intelligence that made Tom catch his breath. As the babies grew stronger, Tom noticed they were different from each other. The silver one was curious about everything and liked to be held. The red-scaled baby was bold and always tried to climb out of its bed. The blue one was quiet but watched everything with careful attention. By the second week, all 3 were eating solid food and making soft, chirping sounds to each other. Tom realized they were trying to communicate. When he spoke to them, they would tilt their heads and chirp back as if they understood him. Their scales now glowed softly with inner light, and their wings had grown strong enough for short flights around the cargo bay. Tom knew he should report them. Every day that passed made him more of a criminal in the eyes of galactic law, but every day also made it harder to imagine giving them up. They followed him around the ship like puppies, curling up near him when he slept, and seemed genuinely happy to see him when he entered the room. The red one had started bringing him small gifts, shiny bits of metal from around the ship arranged in neat piles. The blue one would hum soft melodies that seemed to calm Tom when he was stressed. The silver one had figured out how to open doors and often appeared suddenly beside him, wanting attention. They were not just animals. They were individuals with personalities and feelings. Tom found himself talking to them about his day, his plans, his loneliness out in space, and somehow, they seemed to understand. 1 month after rescuing them, Tom made his decision. He deleted all records of finding the alien ship and filed a false report claiming the wreckage had been empty. He bought supplies at distant stations, paying cash and avoiding questions. He made modifications to his ship to hide the energy signatures the babies gave off. The dragons were his family now, and he would protect them no matter what it cost him. He had been alone for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to be needed, to have someone happy to see him come home. The babies had given him a purpose beyond just surviving. Tom looked at the 3 young dragons playing in their makeshift home and smiled. They trusted him completely, and he would not let them down. Whatever came next, they would face it together. In the vast emptiness of space, they had found each other, and that was worth any risk. The universe was about to become a much more dangerous place for all of them. But Tom did not know that yet. For now, there was only the quiet happiness of an unexpected family and the soft glow of dragon scales in the darkness between stars. 6 months had changed everything aboard Tom's salvage ship. The cargo bay now looked more like a playground than a storage space, with climbing structures made from scrap metal and soft nests built into every corner. The 3 baby dragons had grown from tiny creatures that fit in Tom's hands to sleek juveniles the size of large dogs. Tom had named them based on their personalities and colors. Ember, the red-scaled one, was brave and protective, always the first to investigate new sounds or strangers. Frost, with silver scales that sparkled like ice, was playful and affectionate, often curling up against Tom while he worked. Storm, the blue dragon, was thoughtful and calm, preferring to watch and learn before acting. The dragons had developed far beyond what Tom expected. They solved complex puzzles he created for them, learned to operate simple ship controls, and showed emotions as clearly as any human. When Tom was sad, they would gather around him, humming in harmony until he felt better. When he was happy, they would dance in the air, their scales glowing brighter with shared joy. Most surprising of all, they had learned to speak, not in words, but through musical tones and harmonic frequencies that Tom somehow understood. Ember's voice was deep and warm like a cello. Frost sang in high, clear notes like silver bells. Storm's communications were complex melodies that seemed to carry multiple meanings at once. Tom discovered their intelligence by accident when he found Storm operating the navigation computer, plotting courses to systems rich in the rare crystals the dragons loved to eat. Frost had learned to activate the coffee maker, bringing Tom his morning drink before he even woke up. Ember had figured out how to modify the ship's defensive systems, making them more efficient than Tom could have managed alone. The bond between Tom and his unusual family grew stronger each day. They refused to eat unless he was present, would not sleep unless they could see him, and became distressed whenever he had to leave the ship. Tom found he felt the same way. After years of loneliness in space, coming home to 3 excited dragons who were genuinely happy to see him had changed his entire outlook on life. Everything went wrong on a Tuesday. Tom was docked at a supply station in the outer colonies, loading food and ship parts when his scanner detected incoming military vessels. 3 sleek government ships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately began broadcasting override codes to the station's communications array. "Attention salvage vessel registration number 7742, came the cold voice over the comm. "You are ordered to remain docked and prepare for inspection. This is Commander Hayes of the Galactic Council Enforcement Division." Tom's blood ran cold. He had been careful, but somehow they had found him. Through the porthole, he could see armed soldiers in environmental suits approaching his ship's airlock. "Ember, Frost, Storm, come here now," Tom called urgently. The dragons appeared instantly, sensing his distress. Their scales had darkened with worry and they pressed close to him. "We have to leave. Right now." Tom's hands flew over the controls, beginning emergency undocking procedures. The dragons chirped questions at him in their musical language. "Bad people are coming. They want to take you away from me." Tom's voice was tight with fear and anger. The dragons' eyes widened, and their scales began to glow with fierce light. The docking clamps released just as the soldiers reached the airlock. Tom fired the engines and pulled away from the station, but the military ships were already moving to intercept. Warning shots flashed past the cockpit windows. "Hull breach in airlock 7, Storm sang urgently, his head tilted toward the rear of the ship. The soldiers had managed to attach some kind of boarding device before Tom escaped. Ember growled, a sound that made the ship's metal walls vibrate. Without waiting for permission, the Red Dragon flew toward the back of the ship. Frost and Storm followed, their songs taking on aggressive tones Tom had never heard before. Through the ship's internal cameras, Tom watched in amazement as his dragons dealt with the intruders. They did not attack directly. Instead, they used abilities Tom did not know they possessed. Ember's scales blazed with heat, warming the corridor to temperatures that made the soldiers' suits overheat. Frost filled the air with a freezing mist that clouded their visors and made their equipment malfunction. Storm created vibrations that disrupted their communication systems and made them dizzy. The soldiers retreated to their ship and detached, but the government vessels were still in pursuit. Tom pushed his engines to maximum, but the military ships were faster and better armed. "We cannot outrun them," Tom said grimly. The dragons gathered around his pilot chair, their songs sad and worried. Then Frost had an idea. She flew to the navigation console and began entering coordinates with her claws, singing excitedly to the others. Storm joined her, adding harmonics to her melody. Ember nodded and went to the power controls. "What are you three planning?" Tom asked, but he was already seeing the answer on his screens. The dragons had plotted a course through an asteroid field that would normally be impossible to navigate. The space rocks were too dense, moving too fast, and full of dangerous energy discharges. But as Ember boosted power to the shields and Frost took position at the sensor array, Tom realized they had a plan. Storm positioned himself near Tom and began to sing, his complex melody somehow connecting to Tom's mind. Suddenly, Tom could sense the asteroids around them, could feel their movement patterns, could predict where the energy discharges would occur. The three dragons were sharing their enhanced senses with him, creating a combined awareness that let them navigate the impossible course. Tom's hands moved over the controls, guided by instincts that were not entirely his own. They dove between spinning rocks, surfed energy waves, and threaded passages that should have torn the ship apart. The military vessels tried to follow but had to turn back when their larger ships could not make the tight turns. Tom and his dragons emerged on the far side of the asteroid field, alone and safe. As the immediate danger passed, Tom looked at the three dragons clustered around him. Their scales glowed with pride and affection. They had risked their own lives to protect him, just as he had protected them. "We are family," Tom said quietly. The dragons sang agreement, their harmonies wrapping around him like a warm embrace. They had chosen him, and he had chosen them. Whatever the universe threw at them next, they would face it together. But Tom knew this was only the beginning. The Galactic Council would not give up easily, and now they knew the dragons were not helpless babies but powerful beings capable of incredible things. The hunt would intensify, and Tom's little family would need all their combined strength to survive what was coming. Tom's face was now on wanted posters in every spaceport from the core worlds to the outer rim. The bounty was enormous, 50 million credits for his capture and the return of the stolen alien specimens. Commander Hayes had made it personal, declaring Tom a dangerous terrorist who threatened galactic security by harboring unknown alien creatures. The truth was different, but truth did not matter to the hunters now tracking them across space. Tom kept his ship moving constantly, never staying in one system longer than a few days. They lived on packaged food and recycled water, afraid to dock at stations where bounty hunters waited. The dragons had grown larger during their months on the run. Ember now stood as tall as Tom's waist, his red scales gleaming like polished rubies. Frost had developed intricate patterns across her silver hide that seemed to shift and change in the light. Storm's blue scales had darkened to deep sapphire, and his songs had become so complex that sometimes Tom felt they contained entire conversations. During a supply stop at a remote mining station, Tom learned more about what his dragons really were. The station's elderly owner, a grizzled prospector named Old Pete, took one look at the dragons hiding in Tom's cargo bay and went pale. Those are Draknari, Pete whispered, his eyes wide with something between fear and awe. I thought they were all dead. Pete told Tom the story while the dragons listened, their attention focused completely on the old man's words. The Draknari had once been the most powerful species in the galaxy, serving as guardians and peacekeepers among the stars. They were incredibly long-lived, deeply intelligent, and possessed abilities that seemed like magic to other races. They could share thoughts, see across vast distances, and their songs could heal or destroy, Pete explained. But they were also proud and independent. When the Council tried to control them, the Draknari refused. A war followed that lasted centuries. The war had ended not in victory for either side, but in tragedy. A plague created by desperate council, scientists had swept through Draknari space, killing nearly all of them. The survivors scattered to hidden worlds, but cosmic raiders had hunted down most of the remaining colonies. Pete had heard rumors that the last Draknari homeworld had been destroyed only months ago. As Pete spoke, the dragon songs grew sad and haunting. Tom realized they understood every word, and that somewhere in their young minds were memories of their lost people. Frost curled up against Tom's side, seeking comfort. Ember's scales dimmed with grief. Storm sang a melody so mournful that Tom felt tears in his eyes. The Council wants them back because they are afraid, Pete continued. Draknari adults are nearly impossible to kill and completely impossible to control. But babies raised by humans might be different. They might be loyal to the Council instead of their own kind. Tom felt sick. The authorities were not trying to rescue the dragons or study them for science. They wanted to turn them into weapons, raise them to be soldiers who would obey human commands. The thought of his gentle, loving dragons being twisted into instruments of war made him furious. Their conversation was interrupted by alarms. 3 Council ships had found them again, surrounding the mining station and demanding surrender. This time, Hayes had brought a full strike force with boarding shuttles and heavy weapons. Tom ran for his ship with the dragons close behind, but they were too late. Soldiers were already cutting through the station's hull, trying to reach his docking bay. The dragons spread their wings and positioned themselves between Tom and the approaching threats. For the first time since rescuing them, Tom saw the dragons truly angry. Their scales blazed with light, and their songs became harsh battle cries that made the station's metal walls ring like bells. When the first soldiers broke through, they faced not helpless baby animals, but the awakened power of an ancient warrior race. Ember breathed not fire, but pure heat that melted the soldiers' armor and forced them back. Frost created walls of ice that blocked their advance and made their weapons malfunction. Storm's voice shattered their communication equipment and created vibrations that knocked them off their feet. But the dragons held back from killing, even when the soldiers used weapons against them. Tom realized they were protecting him while trying not to become the monsters the Council claimed they were. Their restraint was both noble and dangerous. The soldiers had no such limits. "We have to go," Tom shouted over the noise of battle. The dragons reluctantly fell back, still singing their war songs. They reached Tom's ship just as more soldiers broke through the outer defenses. This time, their escape was different. As Tom fired the engines and pulled away from the station, Storm approached him with something Tom had never seen before: fear in the young dragon's eyes. Storm sang a complex melody, and suddenly Tom's mind was filled with images that were not his own. He saw through Storm's eyes, felt through Storm's senses, and understood that the dragon was sharing his memories directly. The images showed him things that made his heart race. He saw the inside of Council research facilities where other alien creatures were kept in cages, subjected to experiments and training designed to make them into weapons. He saw scientists discussing the Draknari babies, planning how to separate them from Tom and break their emotional bonds. He saw military officers talking about breeding programs and the creation of super soldiers. But most terrifying of all, Tom saw Commander Hayes in his private office, speaking to shadowy figures on secured channels. The dragons were just the beginning. The Council planned to hunt down and capture every remaining non-human intelligence in the galaxy, either to use them as tools or to eliminate them as threats. The vision ended, leaving Tom shaken and angry. The dragons clustered around him, their songs gentle and comforting now that the immediate danger was past. They had shown him the truth, because they trusted him completely, even with knowledge that could break his heart. "I am sorry," Tom whispered, to them. "I am sorry your people are gone. I am sorry the universe is full of people who want to hurt you. But I promise you this. I will never let them take you. Never." The dragons sang agreement, their harmonies wrapping around him like a warm blanket. Ember placed his great head against Tom's shoulder. Frost curled her tail around his arm. Storm hummed a melody that seemed to say they believed him. But Tom knew the hunt would only get worse now. Hayes had seen what the dragons could do when threatened, and that would make him more desperate to capture them. The next time, there would be more ships, better weapons, and fewer chances to escape. Tom set course for the darkest regions of uncharted space, places where even the Council's reach might not extend. His dragons trusted him to keep them safe, and he would find a way to do exactly that no matter what it cost him. Behind them, Commander Hayes was already planning his next move, and this time he intended to make sure neither Tom nor his alien family ever escaped again. Haven Station floated in the shadow of a massive gas giant, hidden from most star charts and forgotten by the galaxy at large. Tom had heard whispers about the place during his salvaging days, a neutral ground run by ex-military personnel who asked no questions and offered sanctuary to those the galaxy had forgotten. The station looked like it had been cobbled together from a dozen different ship designs over many years. Solar panels and communication arrays stuck out at odd angles, and the docking bays were a mixture of human, alien, and hybrid technologies. But the defenses Tom's scanners detected were anything but makeshift. Haven Station could protect itself. Rose. Bennett met them at the airlock, and Tom immediately understood why people trusted her with their lives. She was tall and confident, with gray hair and steady eyes that seemed to see everything. Her handshake was firm, and when she looked at the dragons emerging from Tom's ship, she showed no fear or surprise. "So you are the fugitive everyone is hunting," Rose said calmly. "And these are the famous dragon babies that have the Council so worried." The dragons chirped greetings and positioned themselves protectively around Tom, but their songs were curious rather than aggressive. Rose led them through the station's winding corridors, past workshops where beings of a dozen different species worked on various projects. Tom saw humans, tall blue-skinned aliens, furry creatures that looked like walking bears, and several species he did not recognize. All of them looked up as the dragons passed, but their expressions were interested, rather than hostile. "Haven Station has 3 rules," Rose explained as they walked. "No violence except in self-defense. No asking about people's pasts unless they volunteer information. And everyone contributes something useful to the community. Can you follow those rules?" Tom nodded eagerly. The dragons sang what sounded like agreement, though Rose raised an eyebrow at their unusual voices. "They can communicate?" she asked. "More than that," Tom replied. "They are incredibly intelligent. They understand everything we say, and they can share thoughts and emotions directly with me." Rose showed them to quarters that were larger and more comfortable than anything Tom had seen in months. The dragons immediately began exploring, their scales brightening with excitement as they discovered soft beds, wide windows showing the gas giant's swirling clouds, and plenty of space to spread their wings. Over the following weeks, Tom and his dragons settled into life at Haven Station. Tom worked in the repair bays using his salvaging experience to fix damaged ships and equipment. The dragons helped in ways that amazed everyone. Ember's heat could weld metal more precisely than any tool. Frost's ice could cool overheated systems instantly. Storm's vibrations could detect structural flaws that scanners missed. But it was during this peaceful time that the most dramatic changes occurred. The dragons were growing again, faster than before. Their bodies stretched and strengthened until they were the size of horses, their wings broad enough to carry them in graceful flight around the station's larger chambers. Their scales had developed complex patterns that seemed to tell stories, and their songs had become so sophisticated that Tom sometimes felt he was listening to entire symphonies. More importantly, their mental abilities were expanding. The connection Tom felt with them grew stronger each day until he could sense their emotions even when they were on different parts of the station. Sometimes he would know they needed him before they called. Other times he would wake from dreams that were not his own, filled with images of ancient Draknari cities and memories of a proud, noble race. It was during one of these shared dreams that Tom learned the truth about what was happening to them. He found himself standing in a vast library filled with crystalline structures that hummed with stored knowledge. Storm was beside him, no longer the young dragon Tom knew, but an ancient Draknari elder with scales that held the light of stars. "The heartbond," Storm explained, his voice carrying harmonics that made the crystal structures sing in response. "It is the deepest connection our people can form with another being. It happens rarely, only when there is perfect trust and love between souls." In the dream, Tom saw the history of the heartbond. Throughout Draknari history, a few individuals had formed such connections with members of other species. These bonds transcended physical death and created a spiritual link that could not be broken by time or distance. Those who shared the heart bond became more than the sum of their parts, gaining abilities and insights that neither could achieve alone. "But the bond changes both parties," the elder continued. "You are no longer fully human, just as we are no longer fully Draknari. We become something new together." Tom woke from the dream to find all three dragons watching him with eyes that held ancient wisdom despite their young bodies. They sang to him in harmonies that resonated in his bones, and he understood that the choice was his to make. The bond could be severed if he wished, allowing them to remain separate beings, or it could be completed, joining them together in a connection that would last beyond death itself. Looking at the three dragons who had become his children, his friends, and his purpose in life, Tom made his choice. He reached out and placed his hands on their heads, feeling the warm pulse of their scales and the vibration of their songs. The moment their connection completed, Tom felt a transformation begin in his body and mind. His senses expanded, allowing him to perceive energy patterns and emotional resonances that had been invisible before. His thoughts became clearer and faster, enhanced by the dragon's different ways of understanding the world, and deep in his chest, he felt a warmth that he knew would never fade, the knowledge that he was no longer alone in the universe. The dragons changed too. Their scales began to show new patterns that reflected their connection to Tom, and their songs took on harmonics that spoke of human emotions and experiences. They were still Draknari, but they were also part of something unique and precious. Rose noticed the change immediately when she visited their quarters the next morning. Tom's eyes now held flecks of gold that matched the dragon's gaze, and the dragons moved around him with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. "The heart bond," Rose said quietly. "I have heard stories, but I never thought I would see it in person." "It is permanent," Tom told her. "We are family now in ways that go beyond biology or law. Nothing can separate us." Rose nodded thoughtfully. "That may be exactly what you need, because our long-range sensors just detected a massive fleet heading this way. Commander Hayes is coming with everything the Council can spare, and this time he means to end the hunt one way or another." Tom looked at his dragons, feeling their calm confidence through their shared bond. They were no longer the helpless babies he had rescued. They had grown into their heritage as members of a proud warrior race, enhanced by their connection to him and his human perspectives. Whatever Hayes brought against them, they would face it together. The hunt was about to reach its climax, and Tom knew that only one side would survive the final confrontation. But for the first time since this all began, he was not afraid. He had his family, and together they were something the galaxy had never seen before. The Council fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry metal insects, dozens of warships spreading out around Haven Station, in a formation designed to prevent any escape. At the center of the armada, Commander Hayes' flagship bristled, with weapons powerful enough to crack a moon. Tom stood in Haven Station's command center, watching the tactical display with Rose and her senior staff. Through his bond with the dragons, he could feel their calm presence throughout the station. Ember was in the main hangar, his red scales glowing as he prepared the station's defensive systems. Frost had positioned herself near the power core, ready to manage energy distribution. Storm floated in the observation deck, his complex songs already reaching out to touch the minds of everyone on the station. "Attention, Haven Station." Hayes's voice cut through the comm channels like a blade. "You are harboring a known fugitive and stolen council property. Surrender Tom Walker and the alien specimens immediately, or we will take them by force." Rose keyed her own comm system. "Commander Hayes, this is a neutral station under the protection of the Sanctuary Accords. You have no authority here." Hayes's laughter was cold and bitter. "The Sanctuary Accords died with the old council. The new leadership recognizes no neutral ground when dealing with threats to galactic security. You have 1 hour to comply." As the hour countdown began, Tom felt the dragon's emotions shift from calm to protective fury. They had tried running, hiding, and avoiding conflict, but Hayes had followed them to the one place in the galaxy they had hoped to call home. Now their human father, and the people who had sheltered them, were in danger because of them. Through their mental link, Tom felt the dragons sharing memories and emotions with him. They showed him visions of ancient Draknari warriors standing against impossible odds to protect what they loved. They shared the fierce joy their ancestors had felt when facing enemies who threatened their families, and they let him feel their absolute certainty that they would rather die than be separated from him. "We do not have to fight them," Tom said quietly to Rose. "I can surrender. Maybe that will be enough to save the station." The dragon's response was immediate and overwhelming. Their combined voices rose in a harmony that made the station's hull ring like a bell, and their emotional reaction hit Tom like a physical blow. The idea of him sacrificing himself was unthinkable to them. They were family, and family protected each other. Rose shook her head. "Even if you surrendered, Hayes would not stop there. He has seen what the dragons can do, and he knows this station harbors others the council wants to control or eliminate. This was always going to end in a fight." As the deadline approached, Tom made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of preparing for battle, he walked to the station's main docking bay where his ship waited. The dragons followed, their songs questioning and worried. "I am going out there," Tom announced, "not to surrender, but to talk to them, to show them what we really are." Ember growled his disapproval, but Tom placed a hand on the great dragon's head. Through their bond, he shared his plan. It was dangerous and might not work, but it was their best chance to end this without the massive loss of life that a battle would bring. Tom's small salvage ship looked tiny and helpless as it emerged from Haven Station and approached the council fleet. Hayes's flagship immediately locked weapons on the vessel, but Tom activated an open communication channel before anyone could fire. "Commander Hayes, this is Tom Walker. I want to talk." "There is nothing to discuss," Hayes replied. "Return to your station and prepare for boarding." "Look at your sensors," Tom said calmly. "Look at the energy readings coming from my ship. Look at what we have become." On every ship in the fleet, sensor operators were reporting the same impossible readings. Tom's small vessel was generating energy patterns that should have required a ship 10 times its size. More disturbing, the patterns were unlike anything in their databases, a mixture of human technology and something completely alien. Inside Tom's ship, the 3 dragons had arranged themselves around their human father, their scales blazing with harmonious light. Their songs had become a single complex melody that carried across space itself, touching the minds of everyone in the council fleet. For the first time in his military career, Commander Hayes felt doubt creep into his certainty. The creatures on that ship were not the dangerous monsters he had been hunting. Through their shared song, he could feel their emotions as clearly as his own. They were afraid, not of death, but of separation from the human who had become their family. They were angry, but not at him personally, at a universe that seemed determined to tear apart the one good thing they had found. Most of all, they were absolutely unshakably loyal to Tom Walker, not because they had been trained or programmed, but because they loved him. The dragon's song expanded, reaching deeper into the fleet. Soldiers who had been preparing for battle found themselves remembering their own families, their own children, their own fierce need to protect what mattered most. The shared emotions of the heartbond washed over them, showing them what it meant to love someone so completely that death was preferable to abandonment. In his command chair, Hayes struggled against the alien influence, but it was not really alien at all. The love between Tom and his dragons was the most human thing imaginable, magnified and purified by the spiritual connection they shared. It spoke to something deep in every person who felt it, reminding them of what they were supposed to be protecting. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "The crew is requesting clarification of mission objectives. Some of the boarding parties are refusing to deploy." Hayes looked at his screens, seeing his own forces wavering as the dragon's emotional broadcast continued. But more than that, he was seeing something he had not expected. Through the dragon's shared memories, he caught glimpses of Tom's patient care during their first weeks together, his willingness to sacrifice everything to keep them safe, their desperate attempts to protect him during their escapes. This was not a human controlling alien weapons. This was a father protecting his children, and children protecting their father across species lines that should have been impossible to cross. "Commander," Tom's voice came over the comm, gentle but firm. "You have seen what we are now. We are not a threat to the galaxy. We are proof that different species can live together, love each other, and become stronger than either could be alone. Is that really something the Council wants to destroy?" The fleet hung motionless in space while Hayes wrestled with a decision that would define his career and possibly the future of galactic relations. Around him, his officers watched and waited, many of them clearly affected by the dragon's emotional broadcast. Finally, Hayes made his choice. "All ships stand down. Recall boarding parties and withdraw to safe distance." He opened a direct channel to Tom's ship. "Mr. Walker, I am prepared to discuss terms." The negotiation that followed changed everything. Faced with undeniable proof of the dragon's intelligence and their genuine bond with Tom, the Council was forced to recognize them as sentient beings with rights rather than property to be claimed. Tom was granted legal guardianship, with Haven Station designated as a protected sanctuary for interspecies families. But the most important change was in how the galaxy saw itself. The story of Tom and his dragons spread to every world, every station, every ship. It became proof that the barriers between species were not as solid as everyone had believed. Within months, Haven Station became a beacon for others seeking the same kind of connection Tom had found. Humans arrived with rescued alien children they refused to abandon. Alien families brought their human-born offspring looking for a place where mixed heritage was celebrated rather than feared. Scientists came to study the heartbond phenomenon, while philosophers debated what it meant for the future of galactic civilization. Tom and his dragons became the unlikely ambassadors of a new age. Ember, now magnificent with scales that held the warmth of stars, worked with engineers to develop technologies that combined human innovation with Draknari energy manipulation. Frost, her silver patterns shifting like liquid moonlight, helped establish communication protocols that allowed different species to share emotions and memories safely. Storm, whose songs had grown complex enough to carry the wisdom of ages, served as a mediator in disputes between species that had been enemies for generations. The heartbond had changed Tom as well. His lifespan had extended to match that of his dragon family, ensuring they would never be separated by the natural passage of time. His understanding of the universe had deepened, enhanced by perspectives that were both ancient and utterly alien to human experience. Yet he remained fundamentally himself, a salvage operator who had chosen love over law and changed the galaxy in the process. Commander Hayes, transformed by his encounter with the dragon's emotional truth, retired from military service and joined Haven Station's security force. He often said that learning to see the universe through their eyes had taught him more about protecting people than all his years of military training combined. Years passed and the three dragons grew into their full magnificence. They stood as tall as houses when they chose to, their scales holding patterns of light that told the story of their unique family. But they still curled up next to Tom when he slept, still brought him small gifts, still sang lullabies when he was troubled by dreams. Tom often stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, watching ships arrive carrying families that would have been impossible just a few years before. Through his bond with the dragons, he could feel the joy and hope radiating from the newcomers as they found acceptance for the first time in their lives. "Did you ever imagine it would lead to this?" Rose asked one evening, joining him at the viewport. Around them, the station bustled with activity as beings of dozens of species worked together on projects that would benefit everyone. Tom smiled, feeling the warm presence of his dragons through their eternal connection. Somewhere in the station, Ember was teaching young humans how to work with energy fields. Frost was helping alien children learn to control their natural abilities. Storm was composing a song that would be broadcast across the galaxy, carrying messages of hope and acceptance to anyone willing to listen. "I just wanted to save 3 baby dragons," Tom replied. "I never thought about changing the galaxy." "Sometimes the smallest acts of love have the biggest consequences," Rose observed. "You showed everyone that family is not about species or biology. It is about choosing to care for each other no matter what the cost." The dragon song drifted through the station, a harmony that spoke of home, safety, and unconditional love. Tom closed his eyes and let their music wash over him, grateful for the day he had chosen 3 dying babies over galactic law. In the vastness of space, Haven Station continued its orbit around the gas giant, a small point of light in the darkness. But the light it represented had spread throughout the galaxy, proving that love could cross any barrier, and that family was whatever you chose to make it. Tom and his dragons had found each other among the wreckage of broken dreams and ancient tragedy. Together they had built something beautiful and lasting, not just for themselves but for everyone brave enough to believe that the universe could be better than it was. The hunt was over, the family was safe, and the galaxy would never be the same.